Well, it's a pleasure and thank you for joining us on this coffee court where we ask critical questions, but questions that matter. My name is Makubia Fred, and I'm pleased to be speaking to Dr. Wakida Patrick. He's the CEO of Research World International. Of course, many of you know him for making research polls, but this time around we'll be discussing matters of economics, and he'll be weighing on us on the matters of economic status in this country. Doctor, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Makoya.
You're welcome. You were senior in research. What's your take on the current situation, economic situation of this country, from a research point of view?
One, Uganda, like any other country, has suffered a recession. You recall from 2020 to almost end of 2021, nobody was working. To sum it up, actually few sectors were in operation. That means production was at the lowest point.
In some sectors?
In Uganda, for example, the recommendation from the president was that there must be certain sectors that can work. Specialized sectors. When the economy was opened in 2022, then you had few goods being chased by too many people. In economics, we call that an inflation situation.
Are you saying during the pandemic there was inflation?
After the pandemic. After the pandemic. We have experienced inflation running from 3.8 to currently to about 9%. So we've had an inflation situation, partly because of the pandemic. During Corona, production was at its lowest, but also partly because of the global economic destabilization. So you have major countries like Russia, Ukraine, and the US engaged into a battle which has disrupted production outside there. But most importantly is that the cost of shipment of major commodity goods, remembering that Uganda consumes 40% of imported goods.
True.
So the cost of transportation of such goods from wherever they come from has gone up. The raw materials. If you went into construction, the price of cement as of 2020 September was about 26,200 shillings.
That's true.
Today, you're buying the same bag of cement at about 35,000. That is pretty 35-40% increment.
But even the things that we produce from Uganda, prices are high, Doctor.
I am coming to that.
Okay.
So you have had steel products, the price is going up. You have had these things you say we consume here, like cereals, prices going up. You have had the cost, things like sugar and all these things, prices going up. The assumption that they are produced here is premised on the fact that they are locally produced.
But is it an assumption?
But the ingredients that produce most of those goods are imported. So the prices for importation of such goods continue. That's one. Two, you had an increment in the cost of fuels, petroleum products. Now, in economics, we have a concept of the final resting place of a tax, the instance of a tax. That concept presupposes that you, the manufacturer, doesn't pay the tax, but the consumer do so. Now, assuming you are transporting food from Mbarara to Kampala, the cost of fuel has gone up by about 70%.
True.
The driver of a truck who is picking the matoke in Mbarara will need to cover that cost. And that cost can only be covered by you who consume that matoke. So once the matoke leaves the garden in Mbarara, it will be transported by the truck to Kampala at a cost.
So would they be wrong if they came out and striked? I'm talking about economic strike, not a political. The people that consume these products.
No, you can't.
Because they're the mostly affected.
You see, and I've discussed with those who want to strike, and I have told them, you cannot strike because you need these goods. You are not going to send the truck to Mbarara at the same cost as it was before inflation started. When the liter of fuel was at 4,000, today the liter of fuel is at about 7,000. This man who is helping you to bring the food at that cost needs to cover that cost because he's not subsidized by government or by anybody else.
So what would you want them to do? Because at the end of the day, the Mwananchi is the one who buys soap at 7.5. So what would you want them
Inflation is not necessarily bad.
in Uganda?
Inflation, and I've said this from an economic point, we have not reached at a point where we can cry that our inflation is so bad. In fact, from an economic point of view, less inflation is good because it stimulates production. What people should do is to continue producing. The current inflation you have is a supply shortage inflation.
Maybe you associate with people at your level. You've not had an opportunity to visit people in Katanga, downtown, who face these real challenges on a daily basis.
It's not only here. Please don't think that this is happening in Uganda.
That has become a song everywhere.
No, that's wrong. In the US, for the first time, they have inflation hitting about 9%.
That's amazing.
In the UK, it's about 8.5, actually now 11%. In Brazil, they are going to about 13%. So Ugandans should know this is a global problem. And normally, I am quick to tell government, do this and do this. Let me tell you, government cannot subsidize this problem because they have no control over it. Occasion, they want to subsidize fuel. How much will they do? Global fuel supply is in shortage. What can they do?
So where do you want the people now to run to? They would want to run to the leaders because they hold
You see,
solutions.
people mistook when Museveni said that eat cassava if bread is expensive. He was actually applying an economic norm that in a time of scarcity, reduce on your extravagance. Manage the little you have until when the economy stabilizes. I can tell you this country, for the first time, the government is broke. Broke. That's why you see the first quarter, financial quarter, starts on the 15th of July. Government was only able to pay salaries. That means that the engineers at the district are there, but they are not working.
No, the PS is saying we are handling matters of inflation. I think in just one of
I am coming to that. It's not inflation. The government is broke. Whatever measure they are using now is to try to raise revenue. Even when you talked about the CBR, the rise in the CBR works in this way, that you want to reduce people from borrowing.
That's true.
There is too much money, so you want to reduce. The government increased its treasury bill, brought out the treasury bill for sale. Two things are going to happen. They are trying to suck the money out of the banks, but actually they are trying to raise the money by selling the treasury bills, to raise the money.
That's a psychological approach.
It's not actually.
It's a psychological
If you went to the bank today and you want to borrow, the price of borrowing has gone up.
True.
From 16 to about 19 to 23%. The reason is one, that the government has put up the treasury bill for sale. So if you're a bank, would you rather not go with the treasury bill, which has got no risk, than lending to Makuya, who probably will default? But by so doing that, as a bank, you are buying treasury bills, you are giving money to government. Because that's the reserves they have. That's the reserve.
So you, the economist, you are asserting that there's money in the people. I don't know if that's right from the economic point of view.
I can sit here and tell you people are broke. And let nobody tell you that the government is trying to reduce money in circulation because people don't have the money.
Because that's what the economics teach.
No.
You want to handle inflation, increase taxes.
That's very wrong. What they are trying to do is, rather than allowing Ugandans to spend money, to spend money by consuming goods and services from abroad, we would rather restrict them. Because once you allow them to do that, you cause a balance of payment shortage. You understand? Because you are selling nothing to there. But people will continue to go and purchase things there. Now, once you are buying and you are not selling there, it means you are not receiving any foreign exchange. What you are doing is you're sending yours out. So from an economic point of view, you know what you do? You quickly say, okay, let me make it so hard for Ugandans to consume goods from outside. And economists will do that. And I think that's what Ugorobi is doing in the Ministry of Finance. Because we have very little money in terms of reserves. So do you allow all of that to go?
Definitely don't. That's why the mechanism government is putting in place to help us revamp the economy. You've heard of the PDM and many other mechanisms.
Government is trying, maybe. But it's not going to be through that, what they are doing, the PDM, which you guys are talking about, the Myoga and all, because practically they have failed on that.
Is that from a research point of view?
They have failed. There is no evidence that a Myoga, Entandikwa, Bonabagagawale, and all these things have produced any difference in the lives of people. Because it comes out as a political fund. So you have people there waiting to eat it.
Let's look at the economics of it. The politics, it has a political dimension, but there's economic diversion of it, Doctor.
If this PDM money is properly used, it may be produced. It might be one of those things that can produce a difference. Because every village is receiving about 100 million shillings, every parish. If you have a district with, say, 200 parishes, you are going to receive close to 2 billion shillings in that district. The question I want to ask you, what will they produce? Who will consume what they produce?
The society.
So you are going to have people produce a lot of maize, just like it has always been.
Which is not bad.
And
Doctor.
then you will get people buying maize at 200 shillings.
Maybe that's another area of engagement.
You see, economics of a farmer or a peasant is about production and selling to earn money. So if you produce and you don't have a consumer, which village do you come from?
Luero.
Okay, let me assume that there are 50 boys in Luero. Each one is engaged in rearing turkeys, 100 turkeys in that geographic location.
Those are 500.
Who will buy them?
They'll come to town because that is where the potential buyers like you are.
You see, a Myoga, I mean this other thing, the PDM, is spread across the country. So the challenge is going to be, people might start to produce, but they may never have a market.
Maybe that's now when we come in to task government and say, for us, we have everything on board.
The economics of PDM is aimed at getting people out of poverty, increasing money in their pockets.
Which is a good idea.
It's a good idea.
It is.
The frustration should not be because I have produced and I have nobody to buy. You get that?
But the starting point is I have what to produce. The market is where now government, just a minute, is where now government said there is African Continental Free Trade Area. It's where we have COMESA. It's where we have these other members coming on the East African board. All those are avenues of
those
market-based.
markets are quoted. You get, for example, you have all the matokes, but the matokes cannot all enter the COMESA because there is a country somewhere who is also producing the same market. So they are giving a certain quota, this number of tons. It's not a free space.
So doctors,
for example, you cannot carry your coffee and enter United Kingdom.
You can't.
Or the European Union. But you have produced coffee. But what good will it be if you produce and you have nobody to buy it?
Of course, we end up in a tragedy in that circumstance. So as a researcher, doctor, what needs to be re-emphasized? I won't say there's nothing on ground. What needs to be re-emphasized?
You see, government should look at structures, the kind of economic structure that can earn foreign exchange. So you start by producing products for export. Before you do that, you must establish the market, create relationship with other countries. And I think that's what Mr. Museveni was talking about when he came with the coffee lady, this woman, the Italian lady. He was struggling to see, we have coffee.
Was he caught out of concept?
Ugandans talk a lot, even before they understand the objective of something. They talk a lot. But also Mr. Museveni did not prepare people for that kind of intervention.
Maybe that's for another day. So what needs to be re-emphasized, Dr. Patrick?
Production for export. Ugandans can feed themselves, but you need to produce for export. And that should be a processed product. So industrialization. Once you go that way, you have produced, you have processed, you have created jobs.
So that's
the economy will come out of poverty. This business of taking people in the villages to say, let them develop themselves by growing what they do, people growing chicken, people growing, turkeys, it won't take people out of poverty. Let me tell you, countries that have developed, and when we talk about development, we mean qualitative change in the way people live. People mix these two concepts, development and growth. Growth can be anything. It's like you've seen these children who grow tall, but when you look at them, they can be blown down by wind.
Doctor, that's for another day.
Yes. So you need to start by saying, what is it that can change the way of life for our people? We want to start agricultural development. I've seen government starting, giving tractors, but we want to have a center for processing what they produce. What happens when you come at the processing level? You are at the industrial level, and therefore you are adding value to this product. You are also creating mass jobs for people who work there. They are earning. You are going to earn more money on the product, but you have also created earnings for the Basoga.
Would that be good enough as your parting shots, Doctor?
Yes.
Thank you for speaking to us, Dr. Patrick Wakida. He's in charge of research, World International. Of course, he speaks from the research point of view. This is the Coffee Court. The discussion continues. My name is Fred Makubia. We drive your business.